Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 4 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, day 4. We're in the 2nd chapter of the 3rd Canto, and we're just coming to the end of the first section. There's only 2 sections. The first section finishes with verse 6, which we're just going to do right now. And then we'll go into the second section, which completes the 2nd chapter. But first of all, some prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachadeshtarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyas cha kripa sindubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All right, so Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 2, Verse 6. The great devotee Uddhava soon came back from the abode of the Lord to the human plane, and wiping his eyes, he reawakened his reminiscence of the past and spoke to Vidura in a pleasing mood. Right, so there's some detail here in the purport. That first thing is, and it's a really important point and very, very deep point, is that Uddhava is on the platform of pure Krishna Prema, of course. He's very, very elevated, to say the least. He had been absorbed in remembrance of the Lord. So he had forgotten about the external world. And this is what happens with the elevated devotees. They're not really living in this world. They may superficially live, of course, in the world and even do different things apparently on worldly levels, but actually they're living in the abode of the Lord constantly, Prabhupada explains. Even in these gross material bodies we have. So that means that due to thinking of the Lord, they're not on the bodily platform. But now, Uddhava wants to explain some things. He wants to speak to Vidura. And so he came back from the Lord's abode, Dwaraka, to the material plane. Right, so, and Prabhupada goes on, even though the pure devotee is present on the mortal level, but he's there in relation to the Lord to engage in devotional service. So his presence on the material level is completely different from the presence of the conditioned souls who are absolutely on the material platform. So, depending on your, Prabhupada says, existential condition, you can live either on the material plane or in the transcendental abode of the Lord. So, the Prabhupada goes into a very interesting elaboration based on discussions between Srila Rupa Goswami and Lord Chaitanya as described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Let's just go through it step by step. There's a whole sequence of points. So first of all, the conditioned souls are enjoying or going through the results of fruitive activities, life after life. But then some may be influenced by the association of devotees, and particularly pure devotees, like those of us who were fortunate enough to have Prabhupada's association, even just somewhat indirectly or not so much. But the influence of the association of the pure devotee was so transformational. So in that way, they get the chance to execute devotional service. And being engaged like that, they get taste. And Prabhupada actually makes the point, this taste is the seed of devotional service. And one who's fortunate enough to have got that seed should sow it in the core of his heart. Then that seed, when it's planted in the heart, it should be cultured and developed by pouring water in the form of hearing and chanting of the holy name, pastimes of the Lord. And in this way, the creeper of devotional service grows. Yes, it's the process, as we've all heard before. And the devotee goes on watering by constant hearing and chanting. So therefore the seed fructifies and the creeper grows and eventually grows so high it enters the spiritual world until it reaches Goloka Vrindavan. And the devotee gardener, and this is such a deep point, the devotee gardener is in touch with the abode of the Lord, even from the material plane, by performing devotional service based on hearing and chanting. So then eventually, as a creeper takes shelter of a stronger tree, similarly the creeper of devotional service takes shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord, and in that way becomes fixed. So then when the creeper is fixed, then the fruit of the creeper comes. And that's love. That's love of God. So then the gardener is able to enjoy this fruit of love, and his life becomes successful. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying that Uddhava attained this stage, is evident from his dealings. That's an important point. If change has taken place, then evidence will be there. It's not just words, but the life of the person becomes evidence. So that Uddhava attained this stage is evident from his dealings. He could simultaneously reach the supreme planet and still appear in this world. Okay, so now we go on to the second section, and it's a very big section, from verse 7 to verse 34, which is the end of the chapter. And the section we have titled, Uddhava starts responding to Vidura. Yeah. Chapters entitled Remembrance of Lord Krishna. So Uddhava is going to describe his remembrances of Krishna to Vidura. Okay, so let's read the verses. Verse 7. Sri Uddhava said, "My dear Vidura, the sun of the world, Lord Krishna, has set, and our house has now been swallowed by the great snake of time. What can I say to you about our welfare?" Verse 8. This universe with all its planets is most unfortunate, and even more unfortunate are the members of the Yadu dynasty, because they could not identify Lord Hari as the personality of Godhead any more than the fish could identify the moon. Yes. 9. The Yadus were all experienced devotees, learned and expert in psychic study. Over and above this, they were always with the Lord in all kinds of relaxations, and still they were only able to know him as the one supreme who dwells everywhere. Anyway, we'll go into all this in more depth shortly, of course, but this is, a very interesting perspective on the members of the Yadu dynasty. 10. Under no circumstances can the words of persons bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord deviate the intelligence of those who are completely surrendered souls. 11. Lord Sri Krishna, who manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on the earth, performed his disappearance by removing his form from the sight of those who are unable to see him as he is, due to not executing required penance. 12. The Lord appeared in the mortal world by his internal potency, Yoga Maya. He came in his eternal form, which is just suitable for his pastimes. These pastimes were wonderful for everyone, even for those proud of their own opulence, including the Lord himself in his form as the Lord of Vaikuntha. Thus his, Sri Krishna's, transcendental body is the ornament of all ornaments. All the demigods from the upper, lower, and middle universal planetary systems assembled at the altar of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhisthira. After seeing the beautiful bodily features of Lord Krishna, they all contemplated that he was the ultimate dexterous creation of Brahma, the creator of human beings. 14. The damsels of Vraja, after pastimes of laughter, humor, and exchanges of glances, were anguished when Krishna left them. They used to follow him with their eyes, and thus they sat down with stunned intelligence and could not finish their household duties. 15. The personality of Godhead, the all-compassionate controller of both the spiritual and material creations, is unborn. But when there's friction between his peaceful devotees and persons who are in the material modes of nature, he takes birth just like fire, accompanied by the Mahatattva. 16. When I think of Lord Krishna, how he was born in the prison house of Vasudeva, although he is unborn, how he went away from his father's protection to Vraja and lived there incognito out of fear of the enemy, and how, although unlimitedly powerful, he fled from Mathura in fear. All these bewildering incidents give me distress. 17. Lord Krishna begged pardon from his parents for their, Krishna's and Balaram's, inability to serve their feet due to being away from home because of great fear of Kamsa. He said, "O mother, O father, please excuse us for this inability. All this behavior of the Lord gives me pain at heart." 18. Who, after smelling the dust of his lotus feet even once, could ever forget it? Simply by expanding the leaves of his eyebrows, Krishna has given the death blow to those who are burdening the earth. 19. You have personally seen how the king of Chedi, Shishupal, achieved success in yoga practice, although he hated Lord Krishna. Even the actual yogis aspire after such success with great interest by performance of their various practices. Who can tolerate separation from him? 20. Certainly others who were fighters on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were purified by the onslaught of Arjuna's arrows, and while seeing the lotus-like face of Krishna, so pleasing to the eyes, they achieved the abode of the Lord. 21. Lord Sri Krishna is the Lord of all kinds of threes, and is independently supreme by achievement of all kinds of fortune. He is worshipped by the eternal maintainers of the creation, who offer him the paraphernalia of worship by touching their millions of helmets to his feet. 22. Therefore, O Vidura, does it not pain us, his servitors, when we remember that he, Lord Krishna, used to stand before King Ugrasena, who was sitting on the royal throne, and used to submit explanations before him, saying, "O my Lord, please let it be known to you." 23. Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he, who granted the position of mother to a she-demon, Putana, although she was unfaithful, and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. It's a famous verse. 24. I consider the demons who are inimical toward the Lord to be more than the devotees, because while fighting with the Lord, absorbed in thoughts of enmity, they were able to see the Lord carried on the shoulder of Garuda, the son of Tarksha, Kashyapa, and carrying the wheel weapon in his hand. 25. The personality of Godhead Lord Sri Krishna, being prayed to by Brahma to bring welfare to the earth, was begotten by Vasudeva in the womb of his wife Devaki, in the prison of the king of Bhoja. 26. Thereafter his father, being afraid of Kamsa, brought him to the cow pastures of Maharaj Nanda, and there he lived for 11 years like a covered flame with his elder brother Baladev. 27. In his childhood, the Almighty Lord was surrounded by cowherd boys and calves, and thus he travelled on the shore of the Yamuna River, through gardens densely covered with trees and filled with vibrations of chirping birds. 28. When the Lord displayed his activities just suitable for childhood, he was visible only to the residents of Vrindavan. Sometimes he would cry and sometimes laugh, just like a child, and while so doing, he would appear like a lion cub. 29. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who is the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. 30. The great wizards, who were able to assume any form, were engaged by the king of Bhoja, Kamsa, to kill Krishna. But in the course of his pastimes, the Lord killed them as easily as a child breaks dolls. 31. The inhabitants of Vrindavan were perplexed by great difficulties because a certain portion of the Yamuna was poisoned by the chief of the reptiles, Kaliya. The Lord chastised the snake king within the water and drove him away. And after coming out of the river, he caused the cows to drink the water and proved that the water was again in its natural state. 32. The Supreme Lord Krishna desired to utilize the opulent financial strength of Maharaj Nanda for worship of the cows. And also he wanted to give a lesson to Indra, the king of heaven. Thus he advised his father to perform worship of Go, or the pasturing land and the cows, with the help of learned Brahmins. 33. O sober Vidura, King Indra, his honor having been insulted, poured water incessantly on Vrindavan, and thus the inhabitants of Vraja, the land of cows, were greatly distressed. But the compassionate Lord Krishna saved them from danger with his pastime umbrella, the Govardhan hill. And finally, verse 34, last verse of the chapter. In the third season of the year, the Lord enjoyed as the central beauty of the assembly of women by attracting them with his pleasing songs in an autumn night brightened by moonshine. Okay, devotees, there we go. So back we go. Verse 7. The section we said is titled Uddhava starts responding to Vidura. Starts. In other words, there is more. We were going through a number of Krishna's prominent pastimes there. Last was the Govardhan Leela, but of course there's more. When the Lord was present, there he had more pastimes. So it's going to go on into the next chapter. Okay, so let's get into it. Uddhava starts responding to Vidura from verse 7 to verse 34. Shri Uddhava said, "My dear Vidura, the sun of the world, Lord Krishna, has set, and our house has now been swallowed by the great snake of time. What can I say to you about our welfare?" So there's a fairly extensive purport here. Prabhupada refers to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport, where he explains that when Vidura got the hint of the annihilation of the great Yadu dynasty, as well as his own family, the Kuru dynasty, then Vidura was struck with great sorrow. And Uddhava understood that, so he wanted to sympathize by giving the example of the sun, the Krishna sun, or just the sun, by saying that after the sunset, everyone's in darkness. So when the Krishna sun set, when Krishna left 5,000 years ago, then everyone felt like they're in darkness after the sunset. So, seeing the world was in grief like that, over the disappearance of the Lord, neither Vidura or Uddhava could be happy. And they're both equally aggrieved. So therefore, Uddhava says, what can I say to you about our welfare? Because his welfare, Vidura's welfare is Uddhava's welfare, because they're intimate devotee associates of the Lord. So, into the second paragraph, and Prabhupada begins by pointing out that the comparison of Krishna to the sun it's appropriate, because when the sun sets, then obviously darkness is automatically there. But the thing is, the darkness doesn't affect the sun, it just affects us, who are cut off from the sun. Yeah, the sun is not affected either when it rises or it sets. It's just the same under all circumstances. So Krishna's appearance and disappearance is like that. And he disappears from the universe, it goes into transcendental darkness. But when he comes back, when he's there, present in the universe, there's transcendental light again. But of course, ultimately the point is there, that his pastimes are eternal. Yeah, he's always present in some universe, just as the sun is either on the western side or the eastern side. The sun is always either in India or in America. Prabhupada explains, nice example. It's either in India or in America, but when it is in one, it's not in the other. The other is then in darkness. So just like the sun, this is now the third paragraph, just like the sun appears in the morning, gradually rises to the meridian, meaning midday position, then sets on the other side. So Krishna's disappearance in one universe and appearance in another is simultaneous. Just like the sun, at least it's moving from one side to the other. It's all happening simultaneously. So as soon as one pastime finishes in one universe, it manifests in another, and in this way, Krishna's Nitya Leela is going on endlessly. So just as the sunrise takes place once in 24 hours, similarly his pastimes take place in a universe once in a day of Lord Brahma. In other words, not our 24 hours, of course, but in Lord Brahma's 24 hours. And Prabhupada concludes the paragraph by saying, but wherever the Lord is present, all his different pastimes, as described in the revealed scriptures, take place at regular intervals. And then there's a very short fourth paragraph. I'll just read the whole thing. As at sunset, the snakes become powerful, thieves are encouraged, ghosts become active, the lotus becomes disfigured, and the Chakravaki laments. So with the disappearance of Lord Krishna, the atheists feel enlivened and the devotees become sorry. Well, yeah, I mean, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes the point that what's day for one type, for the devotees, is nighttime for the materialists, and night for the materialists, the regular night For the devotees, it's night and the devotees take rest. But for the materialists, they become enlivened when night comes, and then they really want to get out and enjoy things, but not so much. Not so much as during the day. Verse 8, this universe with all its planets is most unfortunate, and even more unfortunate are the members of the Yadu dynasty, because they could not identify Lord Hari as the personality of Godhead any more than the fish could identify the moon. So Prabhupada, or rather Uddhava, is lamenting for the unfortunate people in this world, particularly those who were there 5,000 years ago when Krishna was there, but they just couldn't recognize him. So in that sense, they just missed the incredible benefit they could have got. So, yeah, in his pastimes, he was just exhibiting his potencies as the Lord, his opulences and everything. And it's just also amazing and extremely beneficial that they missed out. Yeah, the fools couldn't understand that he was God. They might have thought he was some special historical person, but more than that, they just couldn't. They just were not able to relate to, because they didn't really have a personal touch because they were with him, because they weren't devotees. But now so that's the non-devotees basically. But now we're talking about the members of the Yadu dynasty, and they were all associates of the Lord. But they are even more unfortunate because as his associates, they were with him regularly, but still they couldn't recognize him. So Uddhava's lamenting, Prabhupada says, that although he knew Krishna was God, but he felt he didn't do enough service to him. Prabhupada concludes the paragraph, the pure devotee of the Lord thinks himself most unfortunate. That is due to excessive love for the Lord, and is one of the transcendental perceptions of viraha, the suffering of separation. Right, so there's a second paragraph here. Let's have a look at that. So the picture was presented in the verse of the moon being born from the milk ocean, but the milk ocean couldn't recognize that this is the moon. Anyway, Prabhupada gets into it. Shastra tells us that the moon was born from the milk ocean in the higher planets, and there lives Kshirodakshai Vishnu in the milk ocean. And this world is also called Go, which means cow. Prabhupada makes interesting Ayurvedic statement. A cow's urine is salty, and the Ayurveda says cow's urine is good for liver problems. So liver patients may never take milk, but they may know it exists, even though they've never tasted it. So similarly, people who have only experienced the saltwater ocean, like us, can take information from Shastra that there is a milk ocean, even though we've never seen it. So, during the churning of the milk ocean, described later on in Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th canto, the moon came out from the milk ocean and then came out and went up into the sky. But the fish in the milk ocean, when the moon was in the milk ocean, they couldn't recognize it. They thought it was another fish, just some sort of different fish. Yes, or just something bright, but they couldn't actually recognize this is the moon, which of course the moon is very special. They thought maybe it's just something illuminating, but nothing more. So the unfortunate people who are being referred to here by Uddhava, they couldn't recognize, they can't recognize Krishna like those fish couldn't. And they think he's one of us. But just a more powerful version of us. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by referring to, partially quoting Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 verse 11, Avajananti mamudha manashim tanamasritam, famous verse that fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They don't understand his eternal nature and supreme dominion over all that be. So this is what Uddhava is saying, that he was there right in front of us, but we just, even us, what to speak of the ordinary conditioned souls, but even people like us who are his devotees didn't get it. Verse 9, the Yadus were all experienced devotees, learned and expert in psychic study. Over and above this, they were always with the Lord in all kinds of relaxations, and still they were only able to know him as the one supreme who dwells everywhere. The point is there in the purport that, of course, you can't understand the Lord or the super soul by speculation, only by his mercy. And the Yadus, they were very learned, but they knew him as Paramatma, super soul. But they couldn't understand he's the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's not due to a lack of erudition, because they were extremely learned. So what's it due to then? It's due to misfortune. But Prabhupada goes on, in Vrindavan, however, the Lord was not even known as Paramatma, but only as the object of love. Yes. So they didn't know him as the Lord. But the Yadus in Dwaraka, they knew him as Vasudeva, as the super soul, but not as the actual Supreme Lord himself, the ultimate form. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, as scholars of the Vedas, they verified the Vedic hymns. And then some words from some of the Vedic hymns. Yeah. So because of that, the Yadus therefore accepted Lord Krishna as the super soul incarnated in their family, and not more than that. Isn't that amazing? A different perspective on the Yadu dynasty. So verse 10, under no circumstances can the words of persons bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord deviate the intelligence of those who are completely surrendered souls. Right. So, Krishna's the Lord, accepted by the great acharyas, even Shankaracharya. But when he was present here, different classes of people accepted him in different ways. And the Yadus, they were partially conscious of him, as we mentioned. Anyway, people who had faith in Shastra accepted him as he is, but when he left, they were greatly bereaved. And we already read about in the first canto the feelings of Yudhisthira and Arjuna when they understood the Lord had disappeared. So there's a second paragraph. The Yadus, the Yadavas, were partially conscious of him, only partially, but still they're glorious because they associated with him as the head of their family, and they also rendered service to him. So therefore they're definitely different from those who thought he was just an ordinary person when he was here. So Prabhupada makes strong statement that people who think Krishna is an ordinary person are hellish and envious. They want to establish that he's an ordinary man, killed by a hunter due to his impious acts of killing the sons of Dhritarashtra and Jarasandha. They don't have faith that he's unaffected by reactions of work. And Prabhupada goes on, according to atheists, Krishna's family died due to the curse of Brahmins for sins committed by Krishna, for killing the sons of Dhritarashtra, etc. But these blasphemies don't touch the hearts of the devotees, because the devotees know what is what. Yes. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, their intelligence regarding the Lord, means the devotees' intelligence regarding the Lord, is never disturbed. But those who are disturbed by the statements of the asuras are also condemned. That is what Uddhava meant in this verse. All right, on to verse 11. Lord Sri Krishna, who manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on the earth, performed his disappearance by removing his form from the sight of those who are unable to see him as he is, due to not executing required penance. Let's have a look at the purport. Prabhupada says, the term avatripta drisham, which is in the second line of the Sanskrit, means without fulfillment of vision. And what it's referring to is how the conditioned souls are trying to fulfill, to satisfy their senses, but they fail because it's impossible. And Prabhupada gives classic example of a fish out of water. They can try and satisfy their senses on the land, but they fail because it's impossible. So similarly, we can only be happy in associating with the Lord, and in no other condition, no other place than a place where we can satisfy the Lord. Yeah. And we can do this in different Vaikuntha planets. Yeah. Satisfy the Lord and become satisfied ourselves through that. So then Prabhupada goes on in the second paragraph. And, as he's done many times, Prabhupada, and as he's going to do many more times also, he gives just a light description, in brief, of the Lord's coming. He comes to attract the conditioned souls. In fact, Prabhupada says he appears just to attract the conditioned souls back to Godhead. But unfortunately, so many of them, because of a lack of piety, they can't be attracted. And Bhagavad Gita, what is it, 728? Lord Krishna says that only those who are free from sinful reactions can engage in devotional service and really get the benefit of the appearance of the Lord. So, interesting point for people who are from Hindu backgrounds, that the Vedic system of ritualism is meant to help people become pious enough. Yeah. Only those who are pious enough, who are free from sinful reactions, can engage in devotional service. And the Vedic rituals, karma kandya, etc., they're meant to help people become pious enough. And then, when you become truthful enough, then you can come to devotional service. Not just truthful enough, but pious, including truthful. And then you're going to be satisfied. And then there's a third paragraph, that when Lord Krishna was here, the people who could see him properly as the Lord, they went back to Godhead. But those who couldn't see him properly, they didn't go back to Godhead. Yes. He didn't leave, as is misunderstood by the conditioned souls, leaving like an ordinary person. He didn't do that. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the Lord appeared in order to release the world from the undue benefit of the non-believing asuras. And after doing this, he disappeared from the world's eyes. Okay. On to verse 12. The Lord appeared in the mortal world by his internal potency, Yoga Maya. He came in his eternal form, which is just suitable for his pastimes. These pastimes are wonderful for everyone, even for those proud of their own opulence, including the Lord himself in his form as the Lord of Vaikuntha. So just see. Thus his, Sri Krishna's, transcendental body is the ornament of all ornaments. Okay, let's go through the purport. Prabhupada refers to the famous Vedic verse, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yovadadati Kamam, which basically means there are two categories of eternal living beings. One category has one member, and the other category has many members. But Eko Bahunam Yovadadati Kaman, but the one has been fulfilling the desires of the many since time immemorial. So, okay. So yeah, the Lord's pastimes, they never stop. Just as the sun never leaves the sky, just sometimes visible, sometimes not, in terms of us. Yeah. So when Krishna disappeared from Dwaraka, it was simply in terms of our eyes. And we shouldn't think that the body the Lord has here when he appears is inferior to his body in Vaikuntha, not at all. His body is always transcendence par excellence. And Prabhupada makes the point, interesting point, that actually he's even more merciful when he's here than when he's in Vaikuntha. Yes, because here there's so many candidates for his mercy. In Vaikuntha, they're okay. So in this world, he's even merciful to the conditioned souls, but in Vaikuntha, only to the Nitya Mukta, the eternally liberated. And Prabhupada goes on that the 6 opulences he displayed here, they're rare in Vaikuntha. His Rasa Leela and household life are wonderful even for Narayan in Vaikuntha. His pastimes in this world are wonderful even for other incarnations, like Ram, Nrsimha, Varaha, and so on and so forth. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, his opulence was so super excellent that when his pastimes were adored, even by the Lord of Vaikuntha, his opulence was so super excellent that his pastimes were adored even by the Lord of Vaikuntha, who is not different from Lord Krishna himself. Yeah, he is appreciated even by other forms of himself. Verse 13. All the demigods from the upper, lower, and middle universal planetary systems assembled at the altar of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhisthira. After seeing the beautiful bodily features of Lord Krishna, they all contemplated that he was the ultimate dexterous creation of Brahma, the creator of human beings. So when the Lord was here, there was nothing comparable to him in terms of beauty. And Prabhupada gives some examples. The blue lotus may be the most beautiful thing in the material world, but it and the moon are defeated by the beauty of Krishna. And interesting point, the demigods, at least, however many of them, thought that Lord Krishna was created by Brahma, but actually Brahma was created by him. And because it's beyond Brahma to create such beauty. He creates beautiful things, but that beautiful, it's beyond him. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, no one is the creator of Krishna, rather he is the creator of everyone. As he says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 10 verse 8, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. Okay, let us carry on with verse 14. The damsels of Vraja, after pastimes of laughter, humor, and exchanges of glances, were anguished when Krishna left them. They used to follow him with their eyes, and thus they sat down with stunned intelligence and could not finish their household duties. So Prabhupada talks about his boyhood in Vrindavan, teasing the gopis. His love was so intense, there's no comparison to that ecstasy. The gopis' affection for Krishna was more than Lord Brahma's or Lord Shiva's affection. Excelled them. So finally the Lord admitted, it's in the 10th canto, that I cannot repay your affection. So of course, although sometimes they seemed, Prabhupada says, anguished, really distressed by his teasing, when he would leave them, they couldn't tolerate the separation. Therefore, they followed him with their eyes and with their minds. They couldn't finish their household duties. So no one could excel him in dealings of love as between boys and girls. So Shastra says he doesn't go a step out of Vrindavan. He remains there because of the transcendental love of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, thus, even though he is not visible at present, he is not away from Vrindavan for a moment. Okay, so now verse 15 has an extensive purport. We only have a couple of minutes, so I think we'll just stop here and we'll carry on tomorrow with verse 15. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.